Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Learning English, the podcast where we explore how English connects people, cultures, and ideas around the world. I'm your host, Jamie, and I'm so glad you're joining me today for a fascinating topic: how English constantly evolves and what that means for learners like you. English is not a frozen language. It's alive, breathing, shifting, growing every single day. New words appear, old words fade, and meanings change depending on how people use them. Today, we'll explore why that happens, what role the internet and culture play, and how you can keep up with this living language without feeling overwhelmed. Let's start with the big question. Why do languages, including English, change? Languages change because people change. Imagine the English spoken 500 years ago, when Shakespeare was writing his plays. If you heard someone reading one out loud today, you'd probably recognize a few words, but a lot of it would sound strange. Words like thou, thee, and phrases like, "Wherefore art thou?" were once everyday English. But over time, people found simpler ways to speak. Pronunciation shifted, and new forms replaced old ones. The reason is simple. Communication adapts to what people need. When new inventions appear, new words follow. For example, internet, email, and selfie never existed before the technology that created them. Language reflects reality, and as our reality changes, our words change too. Some of these changes start as slang used by young people and then spread into mainstream conversation. Think about the word cool. Decades ago, it meant slightly cold. Now, it often means great or stylish. That shift wasn't planned by anyone. It just happened because people started using it that way and others followed. If there's one factor that has accelerated language change in the past few decades, it's the internet. Online communication has introduced not only new vocabulary, but new ways of expressing ideas quickly and visually. Words like emoji, hashtag, and viral all come from digital culture. Even the way we write changed with the rise of text messaging. Abbreviations like BRB for Be Right Back or LOL for Laugh Out Loud have become part of everyday speech for many people. Sometimes these abbreviations even turn into full words. For example, people now say LOL in spoken conversation, not just while typing. That's a great example of how written internet language can reshape spoken English, too. The internet has also created a global conversation where people from different cultures mix their English with their own languages. This brings fresh expressions and new phrases into English. Language is more than vocabulary and grammar. It's a mirror of culture. When culture changes, language follows. Pop culture also plays a major role. Music, movies, and TV shows introduce catchy phrases that people adopt almost instantly. For instance, superhero films or popular TV dramas often create idioms or expressions that gain real-world use. You might hear people say, "That's my villain origin story," or "plot twist" in everyday life. Phrases that started as storytelling terms but evolved into humor and commentary. If you're learning English, all this change might sound confusing. Don't worry, it's actually an opportunity. The first step is curiosity. Don't just memorize words. Learn where they come from and how they're used in real situations. When a new word appears online or in a movie, look it up and read examples of how people use it. You'll start to notice patterns and understand the nuance behind modern English. Listening to native speakers is especially helpful. Podcasts, songs, films, and YouTube channels give you real context. You'll hear idioms, pronunciation shifts, and informal phrases that textbooks often miss. Another great tip is to keep a personal language journal. Each week, write down a few new expressions you've heard and try to use them in your own sentences. For example, you might learn a phrase like "no worries" from Australian English or "cheers" in British English, and then practice when those are appropriate. This helps build confidence in using natural, living English. Finally, don't fear slang. It's part of how English speakers connect. Many learners hesitate because slang feels risky or informal, but understanding it helps you sound more natural. You don't have to use every slang term, but recognizing them will make conversations smoother and more fun. Experts predict that English will continue diversifying rather than becoming more standardized. That's all for today's episode of Talk English Today. If you enjoyed this discussion about how English keeps changing, subscribe to the podcast and share it with your fellow learners. I will be back soon with new topic. Until then, keep listening, keep learning, and keep speaking English your way. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.